Welcome to this To The Point Extra. Over the last week, we had an opportunity to talk with a U.S. Senator, the Vice President of the United States, and a candidate for the U.S. Senate. We didn't have enough time to put them in our show on the air, so we're bringing them here to woodtv.com. First, the remainder of our conversation with Vice President Mike Pence. I asked him how he and the president are dealing with the civil unrest, the protests, and demands for more civility, for more criminal justice reform, and differences in policing. Here is part of what he had to say.
Well, what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis was a disgrace. Should never have happened in this country. And as the president said, we grieve together as one nation. But what we're doing now is working to heal together as a nation. After listening to African American leaders, listening to law enforcement, the president's made it clear, we're not going to defund the police. What we are going to do is provide all new resources to law enforcement officers to be able to improve use of force practices at every level of law enforcement, to learn de-escalation efforts, to be able to co-deploy social workers and people that are expert in homelessness and other issues that urban communities face. And we think those are exactly the right steps to begin to bring our country together. But standing for law and order, standing with law enforcement, but working for ways that we can improve policing around the country, and also work, as the president and I have done from the very beginning of this administration, to improve the lives and the well-being and the prosperity of African Americans and every American, especially those in our cities. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that our administration had the lowest unemployment ever recorded for African Americans before this pandemic struck. We've created more than 4,000 opportunity zones, drawing investment into our cities that are creating jobs. We've supported educational choice. We want inner city families, African American families, to be able to choose where their kids go to school. So while we work on public safety and we work on supporting law enforcement, listening to African American leaders, bringing our country together, we're also going to continue to work hard to create opportunities, jobs, better educational opportunities for our African American communities and all the families in our cities.
I've got to get a quick campaign question. Technically, I know the answer to this. Realistically, can you put together an electoral map without the state of Michigan and win re-election? And can you win the state of Michigan?
Well, we're going to win Michigan. 2016, the president connected to people in Michigan all across this state. The message that we could make America great again, make America prosperous again. We could stand strong with our military, have conservatives on our courts. And as I saw the enthusiasm here at the Engine House today, people of Michigan know this president delivered. And you look at the record of this administration, even before the challenging days through which we have just passed and months through which we've passed, I think people understand that it's been promises made, promises kept. I think that's why the people of Michigan are going to vote for 4 more years for President Donald Trump.
You heard the Vice President talk about campaigning. I also asked the same question of U.S. Senator Gary Peters when we spoke earlier in the week. Senator, when we were talking 6 years ago, it seems to me it was an entirely different world when you were running for Senate. And here we are now with the issues that we just discussed and much more that is out there. What is different about campaigning? I mean, for the past almost 4 months, there's been no face-to-face campaigning, yet the election cycle moves on. You don't have a primary, but the primary election is coming up. I mean, it just seems like an entirely different way of doing business. How has that impacted the campaign?
Well, I say first and foremost, you just can't. I can't take the time to campaign when we have a crisis of multiple crises of the magnitude that we have right now. Particularly with my position with FEMA, overseeing FEMA and the federal emergency. I mean, that has dominated my time. I've been involved with, as I mentioned, with small businesses to make sure the Paycheck Protection Program worked for folks, to make sure the unemployment system was available to make sure families could keep food on the table and a roof over their head. In fact, the expansion of the unemployment program to people who normally wouldn't get unemployment, folks who are small business owners, people who are independent contractors, folks in the gig economy. That's actually my legislation. It's the Pandemic Assistance Act that was incorporated into the CARES Act that now provides assistance for hundreds of thousands of folks here in Michigan that wouldn't normally have access to that. And that dominates my efforts. There's nothing more important to me right now than making sure we get through this COVID crisis, we get people back to work, and we deal with the social injustice that we have seen rear its ugly head in such a dramatic way with the murder of George Floyd. And I think we will always I will certainly always have that vision of that knee on the neck seared into my mind. We can't let that pass. We have to take action there. So there is just so much work to do right now in our country. It's why I went into public service. I've always been driven to try to figure out ways we deal with these complex problems and to do it in a bipartisan way. That's why, I'm very proud that I've been ranked as one of the most bipartisan members of the Senate and also one of the most effective. And those two are correlated. You're effective in getting things done when you're willing to work in a bipartisan way. And now more than ever, we need folks who are willing to come together and find solutions to these incredibly challenging problems.
And like the Vice President and U.S. Senator Gary Peters, I spoke with John James, the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, about campaigning in a new era. 2 years ago, you and I would have seen each other a dozen times between the first of the year and now. The last time I saw you was in December at a rally in Battle Creek. This circumstance that we've all been staying at home, how much does that change the way you can campaign? Because as a guy who's watched this for a long time, it seems difficult to campaign without being able to shake hands. That's kind of an intrinsic part of what happens. How has this changed the campaign for you?
It has, Rick, but you know what? The priority has been on keeping our families and our communities safe. My priority has been on people, not politics. That's not just a commercial. It's truly what I believe. I did everything I could to keep my own employees on their healthcare insurance and paid to the best of my ability. I did everything I could to deliver hundreds of thousands of meals, thousands in PPE to frontline workers, and cleaning supplies to corrections facilities and senior centers all over the region. We've given over $50,000 to food banks and $200,000 to a primary care facility in the city of Detroit that actually at the peak of COVID, the third highest amount of deaths in the entire nation. We've been focused on taking care of people and then now emerging from this safely and sensibly to make sure that we keep all of our family and friends and our seniors and our most vulnerable safe. Politics will come later. I believe it's very important to make sure that we chart a path of better representation and more experience because when you talk about emerging from physical health detriments of COVID, having somebody who understands what it takes to protect American lives because they've done it before is going to be necessary in the United States Senate. I have that experience. My opponent does not. Emerging to grow my family business, understanding what it's like to sign the front and the back of a check and to help people's livelihoods in a city that went bankrupt, in an industry that needed a bailout, emerging from a nation that emerged from a recession. That's a skill set that we're going to need to address our economic woes moving forward. So again, representation matters, experience matters, and my opponent has precious little to show for the time that we've entrusted him with over the past 30 years to improve our lives. The time to change that is now. The status quo does not work for the rest of us.
Thanks for watching this To The Point Extra. Look for more content in coming weeks right here on woodtv.com.